What we're going to do now is add some randomness into where the head is pointing. So currently it's trying to point directly at this control. And you'll see that when we move the control, it's pointing directly at it once it settles, because we've still got some interpolation going on. So it doesn't immediately track it, but it eventually will settle directly at the target. So we're going to add some noise to the position of this control. So rather than it targeting this position, and you'll see that this get transform of the control, the translation is plugged into all of these nodes, so you can see where all these paths go to. What we're going to do instead is we're going to add noise here, and then all of these current paths are going to be plugged into the output after we've added noise on. So we're going to right click and create a noise node, so search for noise, and this can generate vectors or floats with random values, and it's between a minimum and a maximum. So this is the smallest random number that could come out. This is the highest, and it will move between. So I think it's essentially Perlin noise, where over time it will change what the output. So let's just connect this to a vector. So what we're going to do is we're going to add it on to the transform. So we take this translation and do an add node, and then we're going to plug this noise directly in. So we'll take the result and plug it into B. And now it knows that this needs to be a vector, so it changes to noise vector, and the values are vectors now. So we've got a different value for X, Y, and Z. So let's just visualize what this is going to look like first. So we're going to set the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 200. And in the forward solve, we're going to delete this in a second, so it doesn't matter where you do this, but I'm going to do a draw transform and connect that through on forward solve. And the transform I'm going to drop down, and we're just going to plug in for the translation the result of the get control plus the noise. So after this addition, we're going to draw the transform there. I'm going to set it to a box with a thickness of 5, scale of 20. Let's compile. And I can't see where that box is being drawn. Let's just change the scale down. Okay, so that's where it is. So I think what's happening is because it's between 0 and 200, the minimum distance could be here, but it's scaling it to some random number between 0 and 200 away from the target. And because all of the values are the same, it's staying perfectly in sync on all axes. So it's not moving this direction faster than this direction or out of sync at all. It's merely going from 0, 0, 0 offset, which is where the control is, to 200. And it will randomly move between those 2 points, but it will never go out of that sort of diagonal direction. So what we're going to do is, instead of it being minimum of 0, we'll do minimum of -50 and a maximum of 50. So now it's still moving in that same plane, so it's still moving diagonally, but it will go before the target and then after the target now. And what I'm going to do is change the speed of each axis. So for example, this can be 0.5, this can be 0.3, this can be 0.6. And you could plug random numbers into the value to sort of seed it differently. But for our purposes, I think just this is going to be enough. So currently you can see that it's sort of bobbling around the target. And I'm going to change the scale back down now that I've actually managed to find the box. So we'll change it down to 10. So you can see that it's moving quite wildly around the target. And what I'm going to do now is reduce the amount that it offsets by. So I'll change it down to -10 and 10. And now you can see that it's hovering around the object and it's not directly on top of the object. So what we can now do is plug all of these that use this vector from the control into the output of this. So instead of targeting the control, they'll be targeting this red box. I'm just going to lower the thickness of this red box just so it's not covering up everything. Okay. So what we can do, we could manually connect all of these to all of the places that use it, but it's easier if you just control drag from the translation, so control click, and plug it into the result. And you'll see there's an unexpected error because it's trying to connect one of these paths which goes into this add node, so that will just get removed. So then we just need to connect it back up because that one is the one that got removed. And the reason you can't just do it all at once is because this connection here could not be moved from there to here. So it just deletes. So we need to reconnect that. And that comes up quite a lot because sometimes you'll be feeding the same value into a lot of different nodes. And there are better ways that you could probably do this. You could promote this to a variable or a local variable in a function. But for the sake of time, I'm just plugging it directly into this. So now what you'll see is that the character's head is actually moving. So even though we're not moving the control, the character's head is moving around, and it's quite subtle, but what it's doing is it's tracking the randomized position. And this should still work when we move this position around. So what you can see is that the head's randomly moving around, but it's still trying to track this spot.